What is it about the topic of giving your unique gift to the world that's interesting to you? And I'm going to start with Miriam. So, Miriam, what is it about the topic of giving your unique gift to the world that's interesting to you?
I think it's our contribution in what we are best at, the, the best things we do or who we are. Um,
And what's your interest?
um, I am an interior designer, so I very interested in always creativity, and I also have studied a lot about spiritual life and try to understand things better and put them into practice.
Great. Great to have you here. Pass it to someone on the screen.
Sarko,
Great.
please.
Great. What's your interest in this topic, Sarko?
Well, the problem with me is that I just will repeat what I told to Celia, that during the time of COVID, I kind of start to zoom and look what the people are doing and what are they taking course. And everybody is kind of saying that I have to have some kind of purpose or meaning or call. And so I decided somehow that I'm deficient, that I should find out what my call should be, because throughout my life, I went from one thing to another thing, which I already talked to Barbara once. and basically it was next things to do. And I was
Maybe you don't need a call. Maybe you
interested in.
Yeah, maybe you don't need a call. Maybe you can just
Yes.
enjoy yourself. You can just say this to anybody who says you should have a call. I mean, it's like don't let anybody else tell you what you need. But if there is something in you that wants to find meaning or a calling, that's a different thing. But other people telling you that. But anyway, so that's interesting. So pass it to someone.
To Alex.
Thanks, Zarko. Yeah, what interests me about this, I guess I'm in a period of reinventing myself, like, figuring out what it is that I really want to bring into the world. I think I have, multiple sides to me that I'm keen to explore and offer and contribute with. And so I think this will help me to deepen and expand the clarity that I have around that.
Great. Beautiful. That's great. Great to have you here, Alex. Pass it to someone.
Celia.
Great.
Right. Thank you. I think I know what I want to do, partly. I've always been involved in politics at a minor level. I think it's absolutely critical that we all are. We start to sort of stand up for what we really care about. And lots of things are making me think that beyond Ukraine as well, in our own sort of villages and towns. And the trouble is I'm a bit faint-hearted. I get low on energy. I'm not particularly confident sometimes. And so I have lots of enthusiasm and passion, and then it all seems to go up in smoke. And so it's about trying to get a bit of something that sustains me in trying to do some of that.
Great. Beautiful. Nicely said, Cecilia. Pass it to someone.
All right. Barbara?
In brief, at the beginning of COVID, I decided to do a retro of all my whole life. So I went and started studying with Steve Gilligan again, just to see what he was up to. I went through the Enneagram. I went through, I expanded out to Connie Ray Andreas to say, "Ooh, tasty treats." And then I'm going, do I want to do what I'm doing now, which is fine, or expand into something that uses more, I don't know, what's my talents? I've been doing too many things. So it's sort of going, okay, let's pick this and go forward.
Great. What are you doing now, Barbara?
I've had a private practice since the 70s.
Right. Wow.
So, counseling, healing, metaphysics.
Sounds like you started when you were a kid. So
I did.
good. Pass it to someone.
Gianrico.
I think it's an evergreen to think about what can I give, and so I'm very curious. I don't know it really. So that's why I'm here.
Great. Great. Pass it to someone.
Marija.
I would give to the world
No.
more love, because this is the basis for our world when the world was created.
Yeah.
Then I would give to the
What's-
into the collective consciousness.
Sorry, the question is, what is your interest in the topic?
Am I interested?
Are you trying to improve what you give
that I
people?
try to improve. Maybe the relationship among different countries, people, cultures.
Great. Beautiful, Marija. Beautiful. Fran.
Okay, the gift that I want to bring to the world is my poetry, and sharing the understanding of how love is not a waterfall, and how love and sex differ. And yeah, that's what I show in my words. And so yeah, so I want to see.
And what's your interest in the topic today?
Well, perhaps,
Why have you come to the session?
because it's something that I really want to share. So I'm here to see what I can learn of how I can move forward
Great.
in doing that.
Great. Beautiful.
I'll pass it to Davey.
Great.
My gift, well, one of them is music, but the main one is music, and sharing music with the world, because it's fulfilling to me.
And why did you come today? Why did you come today?
I'm at Fran's, and she suggested it might be a good thing to do.
Great. That's a good reason.
Well,
sometimes I think that there is no gift that I have.
Right.
Sometimes I think there is. So I'm curious to find out how
Beautiful.
others think about it.
I love your honesty. That's so beautiful, Om. Thank you. Refreshing.
Yeah.
Everybody probably feels the same. Most people feel the same to some degree anyway. Paul.
Yeah, well, I'm retired, so I don't have to give my gift. But I was very strongly oriented towards a spiritual development and the common good. So the personal became political and political became spiritual, and those remain the case. But
what's your interest in the topic today?
Well, because I can spread my talents and interests and energies across a very broad spectrum, because I can't make much difference. But where I can make a difference is in cooperation and collaboration with other people, rather than the atomized, individualistic sense that I've got a gift. My gifts are only realized in collaboration, cooperation, and in complementing others.
With other people, exactly.
Absolutely, thank you.
Great, that's beautiful. So it's really helpful for me to hear what you have to say. Because so this topic is my passion. My life calling is helping people blossom, starting with myself or for myself and others. I always think that when I say my life calling is helping people blossom, it sounds very sort of grandiose, doesn't it? But if I say starting with myself, then you can get that this is really a part of my own personal journey. And I think that some of you, most of you, I don't know, some of you know that I came from, my mother had post-traumatic from the Second World War, post-traumatic stress syndrome. She was a frontline ambulance driver for the Free French Army and won medals in the front line. My father was alcoholic, went bankrupt, had a difficult time. My twin brother became a heroin addict. And so from the age of 16, I knew I had to save my own life. And so, so my life calling really comes from those circumstances. And it's, it's such a beautiful thing to have this life calling. I could talk more about my own story, but I'm not going to right now. And we have had a previous session specifically on helping you find your life calling. So go and look at my YouTube page if you want the video of that, because this session is about not just your life calling, but how your life calling combines with your strengths and your talents, and how your life calling combines with your psychological resources, how your life calling and your strengths combined with your psychological resources, and how that combines with your unique personal history, your own psychological history. And then we can take it out. We can talk about the history of your ancestors and your people. And we can talk about how it combines with the culture. So, for example, Nelson Mandela's life calling was very, very linked to what was happening in South Africa at the time. He was called by, the German word is Zeitgeist, the spirit of the times. And so, all of these things combine together to make you the only person in the world who can offer to the world what you have to offer. You're the only one. And so that's I think that's really special. Sometimes it means that there's a nice professional slot through which you can offer your life calling. But sometimes you have to invent your own niche in the world. And the famous example of that is Steve Jobs, who, when he came back, he was at uni as a 20-year-old or whatever, 19-year-old. He said, "Mum, Dad, I decided the courses I was doing was boring, so I've dropped out of uni, but they've said I can come and do a class here and a class there." So you can imagine how his parents felt. He said, "Yeah, I'm doing IT and I'm doing graphics." And the parents probably thought, "Well, what has graphics got to do with IT?" And of course, he was the one who put graphics into IT. I don't, some of you aren't old enough to remember, but in the old days, it was a black screen with green type, and that's all there was. There were no images at all. So the great innovations happened through people saying that all the niches don't quite work for me, so let me invent my own niche. What's my unique combination in the world? I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who came and did, I should have done a bit of research on this before talking today, but she mentioned it to me and I'm going to write about it in my book, going to talk to her. She came and found a life calling. She really didn't understand because, the life calling, and she looked at her strengths, and she was in IT and she just thought, how, all these relationship skills and people skills I have, how does this fit with being an IT person? And now there's this new role in IT called Scrum Master, which is the person who builds the relationships between this fancy new approach to program management, where she's completely found her slot, where she's liaising between the customers and the technical people and all of those different people. She's found a place which perfectly fits her technical ability and her people skills, giving her gift to the world. And so that's the ideal. And you can simplify it and say, actually, a large amount of your uniqueness will come from your life calling and from your strengths and your talents. But then we add to that your psychological resources. The great thing about psychological resources is that we can build on them. They can be built on quite easily. Your strengths are really formed in your childhood, and you can't take your weaknesses and turn them into strengths. The research says that that's really hard to do. What you can do is increase your strengths. You can make your strengths into what are called strategic strengths. So you can develop your existing strengths. So we've got, the life calling, the strengths, the psychological resources. And also it's really important to look at your own psychological history. What did you get from your father? What did you get from your mother? How was that empowering for you? And how was that wounding for you? And actually, any of you who've done longer term personal healing, psychotherapy work will know that if you do enough healing with your psychological wounds, they become gifts. So I've had to do so much psychotherapy to look at myself as a result of my childhood, that means I can work deeply with at a depth that I would never have been able to work with people if I'd gone off and done what my father wanted me to do, which was to be a banker. I would have been a rich banker, but so the wound, but through the process of healing the wound, then itself becomes a gift. And so there's your own psychological history. And then, if we look a little bit beyond that, I'm just going to mention some of the levels. there's your ancestral history. You know, what was channeled down from your ancestors. And, you know, people don't like to look at that because the 20th century was such a horrible century in a way. Well, I mean, there were wonderful things, weren't there? Medicine and things like that developed, you know, amazingly. But very often, and perhaps the 20th century wasn't horrible because there are a lot of people who came out of poverty in the 20th century. A lot of the world population came out of poverty. But then when you think back to your ancestors, you know, in the village, being poor, you know, you may not see that as resources. But nevertheless, to have some appreciation of what you got that was great and what you got that was difficult from your ancestors. And sometimes, you know, if your parents were people like each other, you know, from the same town, the same class, same education, that's a pretty sort of singular theme. For other people, particularly international people, you can have a mix. So I've got English upper class, I've got military, which I've got German, I've got Jewish, I've got this sort of complicated mix. And so that, you know, the Jewish part of my family got wiped out in the Second World War, and that sort of theme, that sort of that disappearing part of that disappearing fear of disappearing that comes through my lineage, it's really in contrast to the British upper class. And it's like, I don't know which I am. Am I about to be wiped off the face of the earth, or am I meant to rule the world? You know? So all of that stuff can be complicated, and it's worth looking at that in yourself, and also looking at your culture, the culture of your people, if you like. So, for example, all of us carry stuff in our bodies from the period, you know, when we were born. You know, what is it? So I was born in 1955. I'm a man, I'm an Englishman born 10 years after the Second World War. I carry stuff in my body, not only from the Second World War, but from all the previous generations of Englishmen who built an empire, but you had to be pretty dissociated to do the things that were necessary to build an empire. You know, so there's all sorts of stuff that I'm carrying that isn't really anything to do with me personally. So I think that's sort of quite a big thing, that once you get that some of the problems you have are really nothing to do with you personally, you just inherited them partly genetically and partly through the atmosphere of your childhood and the atmosphere of your culture. But also some of there are disempowerments that you may have inherited that way. There may be empowerments that, entitlements that you've inherited that way. So there's always good and bad in it all. So just really understanding yourself is sort of crucial. But if we talk about, let's come back to the key elements of giving your gift to the world. We can talk about first what's great about you, and then we can talk about what stops you. So let's first talk about what's great about you. So the key components, I would say the three major ones of what we've talked about are your life calling. And your life calling is not a job description. If you have a job description, you think that's not your life calling. Your life calling is what's important about a job description. So, so think about, what are you really passionate about? And then ask yourself, what's important about that? So get an answer to that. And then you say, and what's important about that? It's called chunking up in NLP, for those who know NLP. So you say, well, what am I truly passionate about? What's important about that? What will I get from that? So it's not, my life calling isn't to be a coach. My life calling is to help people blossom. And I could say, well, what's important about helping people blossom? Helping people be free. So the way you know it's a life calling is, one, when you say it, you think, oh my God, I'd love to do that for the rest of my life. That's really exciting. And also, you can imagine yourself. You know, I talk to people in the supermarket. One of the ways that I help people blossom is by seeing people and saying yes to who they are. And I can do that because I've got some strengths around connecting with people. I can do that with the cashier in the supermarket, or, you know, the woman on the street, or, you know, I play with this. I once missed a plane because I was so interested in somebody that I was talking to. I was in an airport. I missed the plane. So I can do that anyway. So in my old age, I can just, even though I won't have a white picket fence, that's a sort of, you know, but that sort of romantic image of a cottage. I can imagine leaning on my fence and just saying to people, tell me about your life. You know, just with an open heart saying to people, tell me about your life, fulfills my life calling. So one of the ways that you would know it was your life calling is that you still want to do it. You're still doing it on the day you die. But this today is not really about. There is a video on my YouTube channel that spends the whole 2-hour session talking people through a method, not the best method, but a method for finding their life calling. So if you really want to get it clear, that's one way to do it. Tools for Personal Transformation, starting in the beginning of October, spends quite a lot of time on it. We spend 3 sessions on it, and then we spend time putting it together with strengths and all of those things. You know, if you really want to do that, come and do it properly if you want to, or watch the video. So then let's talk about. So you've got your life calling, but they could be quite similar to each other. You know, I've never done the research. I should go back through everybody who's done the courses with me and try and categorize the different life callings and see how many there are. You know, and because the states, you know, so there's people facilitating, being, and there's a lot of stuff about growth and personal development. There's a lot of stuff about knowledge. There's a lot of stuff about preparation. So I don't know how many topics there are. What makes it unique is the combination. The first thing that makes it unique is the combination with your strengths. So my strengths are all about relationship and people. I'm not an academic, so I couldn't be I could be a psychotherapist, a coach, a trainer, a school teacher, a manager in a business that really liked developing people, an HR person, any of those sorts of things. I could be a priest, actually. You know, there's lots of different jobs I could do. But being an academic wouldn't be the best fit for me, because that's not really a key part of my strengths. So, so I'm experiential, I'm relational. I want to, even being on Zoom is a little difficult for me. So once you know your strengths, and the secret about strength, so this is a really important thing. The secret about strength is the research clearly says that it's easier to develop your strengths than it is to develop your weaknesses. So even though your mother, your father, your school teacher told you to develop your weaknesses, and that may be true when you were learning, your first language, when you were learning to read and write, when you were learning basic arithmetic. Everybody needs, reading and writing, arithmetic, and, language skills. But once you've learned those, don't bother with your weaknesses. Focus on your strengths. And so if you focus on your strengths, you'll find a way to handle your weaknesses. I mean, one way is that I say to people in business, I say, if you deliver your key objectives in your organization, your boss won't fire you for the admin stuff that you haven't done. It's like, if you're really great at what you do, people will find a way of supporting you. That's one thing. The second thing around weaknesses is that if you're really good at your strengths, you can either partner with someone who's strong in your area of weakness, or you can hire people to do it. I have a cousin called Mary Quant who invented the miniskirt, And I remember as a child of maybe 6 or 8, this dinner party my parents had where everybody was in evening gowns, evening dresses, except for Mary Kwan, who came in a very, very short skirt and sheer, we call them tights in England. But what made her famous was she was very, very creative, but she married a guy who was good at business. You know, if she hadn't married him, she would never be famous. So, you know, it's this really getting, what am I great at? What am I not great at? Let me find someone else to do what I'm not great at. And another thing, of course, is outsourcing. And even as a small business person, you know, I pay people for less than my hourly rate to do the stuff I don't like doing. You know, it's just hire someone to do what you know you don't like doing, you're not good at. So that's the secret of strength. And by the way, you can do it yourself. There's something, my favorite strength tool is something called Gallup Strength Finder. And I like it because it's a little bit business orientated, but the great thing is it can be interpreted by a non-psychologically trained person. You can actually buy the book from Amazon, and you know, and then you do the report online and it gives you an answer, or you can just go straight to Gallup online, Gallup Strength Finder. And you can get your top 5 strengths. I always recommend that to start with, and then you can convert it. There are the strength research has 32 strengths, and of course only the top 15 are worth paying attention to. The top 5, sometimes people have a cluster of one sort of strength in the top 5, and that's why once you've done the top 5 you may want to do the top to get the whole result, because then you get to see your top 10, and sometimes there's something in your top 15 that you want to build. So, but another way of finding out your strength is just to ask your friends, what am I great at? You know, I get people to send out an email, can I have a 10-minute phone call with you to you know, I want to ask you what you think I'm great at. What are my strengths? What am I good at? I'm not asking for feedback on my weaknesses, only my strength. Can I take 10 minutes? Everybody says yes. And of course you could do that with your friends, but you could do it with professional colleagues, you could do it with customers. You know, just imagine with customers that you ask them the question, what am I great at? And then you went back to your website and made that the highlight, this is what I'm really great at. Then people's expectations are well managed, and they get, you know, tell people what they're going to get, and then when they get it, they'll feel satisfied. So that's a really important part of making the most of ourselves. Then we're going to go a bit more, for those of you who are not so psychological, into the inner world a bit, which is that if you think of someone who loves you, see their face, hear them saying something kind, feel how that feels. Or someone who just believes in you. So then your feeling state changes. So imagine that you practice that and you had a dozen people around you who did that. And imagine if you said, actually, I want a bit of what Nelson Mandela has got, or Mahatma Gandhi, or Oprah Winfrey, or, you know, when I need determination and long view, I go for Nelson Mandela. Imagine going to prison for 27 years. I can't remember how old he was, in his 50s, I think. So you can develop psychological resources just through practice, by remembering everyone who was ever kind to you, everyone who ever believed in you. Those are the basic ones. Remembering every time that you were successful. This is just sort of mind training, brain training. We all have, you know, you remember your personal history. Well, who has editing rights on your personal history? You do. And are you a glass of water half full person? Do you remember all the good stuff? Or do you remember the mistakes more? Which do you remember more? A lot of people remember the bad stuff more, because the bad stuff can really, really hurt. But actually, it's really important to remember the good stuff. So, you know, the sort of, you know, the founder of NLP, one of the founders of NLP, Richard Bandler, would just say, you know, highlight the good stuff, memories, and low light the bad memories. I mean, that's a sort of, you know, simple answer. Bring to the foreground of your mind all the positive memories, because the positive memories will act. Both sets of memories act as self-fulfilling prophecies. If you believe you're going to fail, you're likely to fail. You'll set it up to fail. If you believe you're going to succeed, you're more likely to succeed. So why not bring all the memories together of success, happiness, connection, relationship, and then have that as a self-fulfilling prophecy. So particularly, you know, those of us who, you know, who've got low self-esteem, or who were damaged psychologically as we were growing up, emotionally damaged, really important to, you know, to have really good self-fulfilling prophecies. And they call it growth mindset in schools nowadays. So that's sort of building all the positive. And, you know, you could take the positive from your ancestors and your culture and your family, but I'm not going to do that right now. And then the other side is, well, what are the negatives? How do I reduce the negatives, the disempowering things? So on, for example, the Life Talent program on, you know, tools for personal transformation, Life Talent Level 1, which is in October, you know, we sort of do all the stuff about what's great about you. And then we say, now what's stopping you? Now you know your life calling. Now you know your strength. What stops you? And then, you know, that, and the sort of sad thing in a way is that finding your life calling, finding your strengths, finding psychological resources, that all can be done pretty quickly. But the what stops you, we have defenses from feeling those things. And sometimes it can take a bit longer to really bring healing to those places. But that's very, very important work to do. You know, an Olympic athlete needs to have a body that in their field is capable of, you know, world championship level, you know, and they need to practice to world championship level. They also need to want to have a goal, to have a goal that says, I want to be a world champion. They need to say that. But the bit, and that's sort of pretty obvious, isn't it? I need to train and to the top level, and I need to have a goal that I'm going to really succeed. But now the sports trainers are saying, you've got to believe that you can win an Olympic gold as well. You've got to believe that you are capable of expressing your life calling really clearly into the world. And then, so, you know, that piece of work is about, well, what are the gremlins that don't believe? Now, if you have occasional little negative thought and you can just tell it to shut up and move on, fine. You know, we don't have to do psychological work. Just, you know, it's not mandated. But if you have creeping around behind you a little gremlin that whispers negative thoughts in your head, or feelings of disempowerment, or it's very easy for you to feel like an outsider, or, you know, who am I to speak in the world? It's very risky if I speak in the world, because it was risky when I was at school. So often, very small things undermine us. You know, the teacher says to a child, read this poem. The child stutters or stumbles and people laugh. And then for the rest of the life, the child says, the person says, I better not speak in public. You know, little things that seem little to adults can be world destroying to children, you know, can be traumatizing to children. And so sometimes we have to, you know, we go back and heal those things. So there are, you know, and there are these one-time learnings, these one-time events, you know, traumatic events. But actually more difficult than that is, you know, if you had an absent father, for example, you know, and you had a mother who was narcissistic, who was more interested in herself than you, or who was disassociated like my mother, you know, who couldn't really connect, couldn't really do nurturing, or even, you know, the family was poor and she went out to work every day, and you were left with, you know, I was going to say an English word, dotty old granny, you know, someone who was, you know, maybe left with someone who wasn't an appropriate carer. You know, so if you're not bad, continual drip, drip, drip of slightly disempowering child rearing can be just as bad as massive trauma. And in some ways more difficult to deal with, because then it's not one incident, it's a whole lifetime of childhood. You know, so for me, why didn't my mother love me? You know, because I was a bad person, obviously. You know, children, they worship their parents. They just think they know the truth. They are teaching me about the world. If she doesn't love me, there must be something wrong with me. If my father's not here, it's because he's not interested. You know, and all of those things, and then you make those a part of your identity, and then you walk around the world with, a bit of you saying, "I'm really lovable. I'm going to be so lovable. I'm going to be the most lovable person in the whole world." You really try hard, but underneath there's a little bit saying, "Because I'm unlovable, because I'm this, because I'm that." You know, I'm really great. I'm really great. When people talk like that, it's because there's a part that's saying, "I'm not so great." You know, I've got to overprove it. And then, you keep struggling, you keep trying to be lovable, and then you compromise yourself, or you don't stand your ground, or you give too much to the wrong people. So that, and the way we've constructed the modern world is such that very, very, very few people get decent child rearing. It's a really, because, in the Amazon jungle, you would, by, an indigenous tribe, as a child, you wouldn't be put down on the ground for the first year of your life, because there would always be, one of your mother's, someone of your mother's age group, or a teenager, or even a kid to hold you. There would always be someone there. And that's not, but we've invented the nuclear family where there are two parents, and sometimes both of them have to work. And then we ship the kids off to a nursery. But actually a really important part of self-esteem and valuing yourself is that sense of consistent care and love from a single person. Everybody needs that. So, I mean, I can't give a whole history of what can go wrong psychologically in a short talk, and in fact I want to take us into a meditation shortly. But so we need to do the healing work. So the life calling, the strengths, the psychological resources, the making the most of your ancestors and your culture and everything that's been given to you is what makes you unique. And also what makes you unique is that the healing journey that you have to go through, but you don't get that benefit until you've done the healing work. So it's really like looking at what is stopping me from really standing out in the world and saying, "Here I am." Like a kid can do before they get damaged. "Yay, I'm here. Aren't I lovable?" We don't necessarily need to be as extreme as that, but just to be able to say, "I'm lovable, here I am. Let's play, let's party, let's work, let's do business." To really shine your light. So it involves both focusing on maximizing the unique, the great stuff that's unique, and then transforming the difficult stuff that's there with you. And that's a lifetime journey, actually. And there are some things, I just need to say this, because there are some schools of psychology where the big sale is you can heal anything, in 5 sessions. There even used to be something called the 5-minute phobia cure. There are some things that are in my body that may never change in my lifetime. So there's something about learning to both being on a healing journey and learning to love yourself anyway, with all your crankiness and all your difficulty, all your woundedness. And yes, we want to heal so that we can be more fully self-expressed. But there's no single person on the planet who's reached their potential, their full potential. I'm sure if you talk to, the Dalai Lama's assistant, they'd say, oh, he can be so cranky about X. I've met people I consider to be enlightened masters. I've spent time with them. I've spent time with gurus in the psychological field. And none of them, everyone carries the scars of being human. That's just the way it is. You'll never, Superman and Superwoman don't exist. There's no one who's, when you, in spirituality, you say someone's perfected, what you mean is that they've recognized their God nature or Buddha nature or whatever. It doesn't mean that they're always nice to their husband or their wife. That they're not carrying something. Carrying some emotion. So there's also really important part of this. It's just to love myself the way that I am, and just loving myself the way that I am is a healing process. So things heal because of it. But if you're trying to change because you don't love yourself, that doesn't work. So that's something that in the healing journey the key force of healing is love. So what I want to do is I want to have a meditation mainly on the empowering stuff, which is your life calling, your strengths, your psychological resources, mainly around that, because in ways that's the work to do first. Then you say, what stops me? Then that becomes curiosity. One of the problems of conventional psychotherapy, long-term conventional psychotherapy, is if you spend all your time thinking about the problem, that may be a problem. It's really great to start with, what's my vision? Any questions before we do a meditation? I'll take a couple of minute break just before we do the meditation. Any questions on what I've talked about? By the way, there are videos on strengths, on psychological resources, on life calling in previous weeks. I'm sort of pulling all of this together because that's the uniqueness. I think it's really helpful to know I'm not competing with anybody else. I am me. My gift is different to everybody's.
It occurs to me, Julian, that there is a resonance here with Jung's idea of individuation.
Yes.
We can integrate the opposites and hold them in the tension and then resolve that tension in a creative outcome, almost like a synthesis, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. That.
I have a comment.
Go on.
You're making a lot of sense.
Well, sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. And isn't it nice to know that I've got both? Celia.
I have sometimes I'm launching onto something and then all of a sudden I get into shame. Shame gets me.
Shame gets you.
I suddenly think, oh, I shouldn't be saying that. Oh, look, that person over there's looking a bit grim. I don't know what's going on in their head, but I always kind of interpret it as, I've said something wrong, bad, and I clamp down. So I think there are things there. I know they're wounds, but I just wonder if you've got in your bag of tricks any way you can get help on the spot.
Well, there's no help on the spot. I mean, really, bag of tricks don't,
Yeah.
There are there are people who can do these fancy hypnotic things, and it may seem great at the time, but they don't last. That's my view. But it's not a trick, but this idea of so the fact that you're mentioning this means that something is coming for healing. So just that idea, and that you welcome the shame that's coming for healing. You don't want to push it away. You want to welcome it, because only by engaging with it will you find out what its message is, what it's trying to tell you, and where the wounding was, and what needs to be wounded. What was wounded. And then curiosity. It's like, so not sort of getting so lost in the shame and saying, gosh, there's something in me that's wounded. Let me be curious. When did this happen? How did this happen? How can I bring healing to that place in myself? And there are lots of really beautiful processes for the healing. And mainly it's, bringing your wise adult mind, your warm, tender heart, and your psychological resource, all that support of people who love you and care about you, and then bringing it to the place in your body where that shame is felt. And it may have been crystallized at a particular young age. I was a young girl and something happened, and then bringing healing to that young girl. And again, it's not a one-off thing, it's a process that evolves over time. I'm very passionate about giving people, psychotherapy can be great, but I'm personally passionate about giving people the tools to do it, not just on their own, because actually we need to do this in relationship with other people. But to discover that we can do this in peer relationships, so psychotherapy is great, but it's great to have individual tools. I do psychological healing with myself every day, but I also sometimes want to share it with a peer member. I was talking to somebody this morning, and she was really, really sad, and I didn't have to do anything other than meet her heart and say the sadness was welcome, because she had been told that sadness was acting, that emotions were acting, and all for there to be some healing, all I needed to do was just to say, I'm here with your sadness. So I'm here with your shame, Celia, and to find a place where you can show your shame, and without being ashamed about your shame. Yeah. Great.
Thank you. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments before
Yes,
we?
I
Okay,
have
great.
comment.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I was thinking about if you have trick for the for the problem. I remember good things in my life. Whenever I think, I forget bad things. I remember good things, and I feel very well when I think about it. The problem which I have is that what wears me out is the everyday life, annoyances. The grill this morning. Finally, I cleaned it up all, and it wouldn't start at all. And very rarely I do remember good things.
The grill this morning wouldn't start.
Right. It's what triggers to start to think about good things, and my life was good, and I was happy most of the time, and everything was fine. But to get into that, I can't remember that. That's what.
Okay. Well, set an alarm every 10 minutes to remind you. And also one of the questions is what triggers you into being angry? How come that's such a strong, swift trigger? And then one other thing worth mentioning is something you can call a generative state. Some people call it a coach state. Practicing states of well-being many times a day, to have a body, mind, heart connection practice in the morning, whether it's yoga or physical sitting meditation or a moving meditation, and then having other activities in the day like playing tennis or walking in nature, whatever rings your bell, looking at the sea, and then saying, actually, I want to connect to this well-being 6 times an hour, every 10 minutes. My desk here, I've got these dormer windows. I can see the sky. I feel that. I just see the sky and I feel well-being. And so this is something to practice. And we're not denying our bad feelings. That's not the point. It's not dissociation from the bad feelings. It's differentiation. So I can see the sky. Then I'm listening. So actually there aren't sounds outside the window very much. I can hear a car. And I'm listening to other sounds in the house. So my ear, here comes a car. And then I'm listening to the sounds in this room, which are my voice and the computer. Then I'm feeling, my toes and my muscles and my skin. And then all of that can hold any difficult feeling. So it's not that I dive and live in just become. We have a tendency to become the difficult feeling, to think that's the whole of us. When we're upset, we're just completely in the upset. But this practice, this well-being practice of having a bigger space, body, mind, but also broad, in which I can say, there are many things going on for me, and a part of me is feeling really upset. And I may need to give time to that part of me. I may need to let myself cry, or I may need to be angry. But it's not all of me. It's not all of my existence. So it's, so then the well-being states are part of that body-mind well-being, coach state, generative state, is actually welcoming everything that comes. Do you know the Rumi poem about the guest house? This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honourably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So having a space that's big enough to welcome all the emotions and feelings that come through the guest house, and that takes practice. This is about practice is really important. It's one of the keys. Have daily practices. And sometimes, sometimes just welcoming being completely in the shit and saying, I'm completely in the shit and I'll be completely in the shit for a couple of days. Because you beating yourself up and saying, I should be feeling well-being or I should be feeling high performance. Actually, I left someone this morning. I was talking to someone this morning and I said, be sad for as long as you're sad for. Don't avoid it. She's sad about her life and what happened in her life. She hasn't really given herself a space to be sad. Now, if the feeling goes on for too long, if you're sad for 10 years, then maybe something needs to happen to help you move it. But it's welcoming. The fastest way to move a feeling is to welcome it, to give it space, but not let it take over. Anything else before we do a meditation?
Yeah, just saying that I've just put some moisturizer on my face because my skin was feeling a bit dry. So I might put a bit more on for the meditation. And do it more than twice a day.
Great. So it's not so much about your skin, it's about the well-being that it brings when you put it on.
Yeah, both that feeling of sort of hydration and my skin. I've been in the sun a bit. So it's a little bit
there's a real big difference with your microphone when you lean back or when you lean forward.
I need to move forward. There we go.
Right.
Yeah, no, just I suppose I've been in the sun quite a lot. So I just to say really, to moisturize more than once a day. It's a form of self-care.
Those self-care practices are really great. Yeah, it's really great. It's good. There are many. So there are physical things we can do for self-care. There are emotional things. There are spiritual things. All of these levels, and it's great to do all of them. When the Buddha was, he went to the ascetics in India, and they all basically ate minimal food, and sat in the same position, didn't drink and didn't have clothes, and he was sitting there, and he sat there for 7 years, I think, and then some woman came along and looked at him. He looked, his rib cage was sticking out. He was malnourished, and she gave him a bowl of porridge, basically, something like porridge, and suddenly he felt all this bliss. So taking care of ourselves physically, that's why it's called the middle way, just to witness the world and also to engage in the world, both of those two, to be in the one and also to take care of our needs. And that can include moisturizer, that can include eating properly, that can, I do my stretching every day. I'm a 60-something-year-old man. If I don't look after myself, I will get older more quickly. You were talking about being activist and being more involved in politics, or, you didn't give me a lot of details, but when you really know your life calling, there's a way that the world answers back and calls you. Mm-hmm. So, for example, helping people blossom, helping people take charge of their own psychological and spiritual development, that's something the world needs, desperately needs, authentic, I don't know, again, I haven't got time to ask you, but authentic, genuine, sincere politicians who want to do good, maybe I'm cynical, but seem few and far between in this country at the moment, to quite a large extent anyway. The world needs you. So sometimes, when I'm doing my work, I say, I'm not doing this for me. Little Julian gets terrified. I did a talk in China to 5,000 people. But it's like, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for you. You upstairs, whoever you upstairs is. Mm. I'm doing this for humanity. I'm doing this for the planet. I'm doing this for the biosphere. Gaia, the organism. So I really find it helpful when I say, this is not for me. This is, I've got my, my problems, my issues, my this, my that. I'm not perfect, but I can offer something. I'll do the best I can. And if I do the best I can, the rest is up to you. Upstairs, you upstairs. And I find that helpful. But there's something about just answering the call, to being a servant to the call. I'm not doing this because I'm important or grand or wise or this or that. I'm doing this because I've been asked by Spirit, or I've been asked by Spirit, and nobody else is, and I've got to step up to the plate. Other people may be stepping up to the plate, but I've had a personal request, so I better do it. And then that takes your own ego out of the equation. That doesn't mean to say we don't need to do the healing work, but it really helps to sort of not feel like an imposter, Anyway, just that was a thought. So let's meditate. The first thing I always do when I meditate is just pay complete attention to my senses. Just checking everything I see, everything I hear, everything I feel. Just doing an inventory, if you like. It's not really an inventory, but it's a scan, a body scan, a scan of sound, a scan of what I'm seeing. And taking a few deep breaths and just relaxing. I don't have to change anything. I can just notice what is. I don't even have to stop my thinking. I can just listen with interest and curiosity. What are you talking about now? How does this strange person work? Somehow awareness itself is more than just my individual person. So awareness can stand back and say, who is this funny guy, Julian? And just be interested and compassionate and loving. Awareness itself is if you notice where everything you see lands in your brain, and everything you hear lands in your brain, and everything you feel lands. For me, it's like it's a field of thoughts, sounds, feelings. My thoughts are just like sounds, other sounds. There's all this stuff rising. And there are feelings which change every second, every millisecond. And there may be images in your mind's eye that flash past. Just observing it all and being interested and curious and compassionate and not rejecting anything, accepting everything in the guest house. And just keep spreading your awareness. So if you get very involved in thoughts, step back and just notice that thinking. Watch the thoughts. So watching the thoughts, even staring at the thoughts. But also it can be really helpful. So not to follow the thought, not engaging with the thought. But it's also really helpful to just put your attention elsewhere. How are your toes feeling? How's the muscles in your toes? Are there any places in your body that have physical tension? Are there any places in your body that feel warm and relaxed? And yeah, just avoid using chat at the moment. If there is a noise on the line, then just to include that as well. Just to include everything that's here. And so just thinking about, what are you most passionate about in your heart? And what's important about that? And what's important about that? And what does that achieve for you? And what does that achieve for you? And what's important about that? So there's something that's really important for you that you could do every day for the rest of your life. And you could do it in your social life with your friends. It's also what you want for yourself, to be treated this way, to treat yourself this way. It's also what you'd love to have at the center of your profession. And if you're retired, your gift to the community that you don't need to be remunerated for. How you want to engage in the world. Be the change you want in the world. And so you're really, really passionate about this. You want to spend the rest of your life on it. Imagine yourself in your healthy old age really doing this strongly, really being this strongly. Being an old person with a twinkle in your eye and excitement in your heart, because you know what you're about. You know how you touch the world. And then let's include our skills, what we're really good at. You know, what do people say we're good at? What do we enjoy doing? What do we love doing? What are our superpowers or talents? What you know you're really good at? What do other people say you're really good at? So then how do you use these skills? Imagine using these skills to express what you're most passionate about out into the world in a unique form. You're the only one with this combination of strengths and this life calling in the whole universe. So it'll look really different. So see your shape of it. See your form of it. What does it look like when you express yourself? Let's include the people, the support of the people who love you and believe in you. The people who you know really well, who love you and believe in you. And perhaps also people from the past, school teachers, bosses, friends, people you don't know so well. and how they support you. I mean, there may be some spiritual figures that support you from any tradition, or from a tradition that you've invented for yourself. Maybe someone from Lord of the Rings, or from a childhood book, or from a favorite movie. Modesty Blaise. And so just gathering around those people who really believe that you can do it, those spiritual energies as well that believe that you can do it. So you've got what you're most passionate about. You've got your strengths, what you're good at, supported by the feeling of those people who really support you, and those archetypal or spiritual forces. You know, Mother Earth supports me. The universe supports me. The natural processes of nature supports me. The spirit of humanity wants me to do my work. And I've got friends here with me who say yes to me, people who say yes to you. So I've got what I'm passionate about, I've got my strengths, what I'm good at. I've got the people who say yes to me and the spiritual forces that say yes to me. And I can express all of this through what the world needs in 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025 and on. I can draw on everything that my society has learnt through mistakes and successes in the past. I can offer this to the world in a way that is appropriate for what the world needs right now. I can build my resourcefulness to keep expressing this more clearly and more fully. And on the way, I may need to heal some vulnerable, sensitive places in myself. I can be powerful and I can be vulnerable. I can push through and I can be very sensitive. I can take action and I also need to rest. I can be outspoken and I can keep my mouth shut for fear of being judged. I can stand up and express myself powerfully. And at other times I can be awkward and ill at ease. I can be great and I can be wounded and cranky. It's all a part of being human. What if giving our gift to the world more fully was also about including the vulnerability of the human condition? What if we didn't need to be great stars, but just to be authentic, human people with warm hearts, doing the best we can, sometimes succeeding, sometimes making mistakes. A famous politician once said, "Success is going from failure to failure without any loss of enthusiasm." It's actually more like sometimes things will work better than others, but we keep going. What is it that you have to offer that the world desperately wants, is crawling for, is crying out for? Are you ready and willing to answer that call? Find out where it takes you. Perhaps there's some healing you need to do of things that are really historical to just support you in being more fully self-expressed, more powerful in the world. So in a moment I want us to stay deeply connected with ourselves, but we'll go into pairs or groups of 3 and we'll take 5 minutes per person to talk about how can I give myself more fully to the world? How can I give my gift more fully to the world? Just a brainstorming. 2 of you listening and saying yes and supporting and not speaking very much but just supporting. Right, welcome back everyone. Great to have you back. Fran and Toby, did you both share? Great. I'm sorry, I should have put you in with 2 other people rather than 3. I wasn't quite sure. Great. What I'd like to do is to start with Paul. What did you get? What is the gift that you can give more of to the world?
It's a 4-letter word, which is a polite one and rather an ideal one. And I think, despite everything, a love which is not sentimental, but is benign, insightful, judging when necessary, and discerning, and that which I want to empower people by a sense of their own dignity and worth, and I want to enable their strengths rather than cater to their weaknesses. And that I think is my motto. Is that all? And
we've got to take a couple of minutes each because we've got just in terms of timing. But Paul, are you, just unmute a second, are you a priest?
Well, you know I am, but I'm a retired priest, and
Right.
my pastoral. Well, yes, I am, and I'm a human priest. I
Great.
think a deeper human priest, though I are, as well as spiritual Christian.
Beautiful. So, everybody acknowledge Paul in some way. It's just really great to just hear the person and just send them acknowledgement. That's just a way we can support each other. And then, Paul, pass it to someone. You have to unmute to pass it to someone.
Sorry. Gian Enrico.
Right.
Yes. I forgot the question. Sorry.
The question is, how can you offer your gift more fully to the world? Did you have any sense of that?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, yeah. Go on.
I think I'm fully agree with Paul and with love, really, with love.
With love. Yeah.
Everything.
Beautiful.
Do everything with love. Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Beautiful. Great. So pass it to someone, Enrico.
I pass to Miriam.
Miriam, great.
Oh, thank you. For me, it's a little bit about what we discussed in the group is stop, try to work in, stop being afraid to take risks, because I know that I can do so much better than what I actually do. But I am very, very reluctant to new things, different things, and take risks, and I have to work very hard onto that, because that has a lot to do with the way I was brought up. Be safe, do what you know.
Okay. Do some healing work, Miriam. Some healing work would support that. Pass it to someone.
Toby, I think.
Great. Toby, how can you give your gift to the world more fully?
Be more genuine, be more real,
Yeah.
authentic.
Beautiful. Pass it to someone. Toby.
Fran.
Oh. So obviously with love, and perhaps need to be a bit braver, and yeah, reach out a bit further with showing my work and poems. Yeah, be more confident. Be more confident.
Beautiful. Great. Everybody gives some signal to each person.
So I'll pass it to Mary.
Marija. Marija is frozen, I think. Pass it to someone else. Oh, Marija.
Through the love, people feel accepted, and through this, they can believe in themselves much more and can help yourself much better, and they develop themselves better.
So how are you going to give your gift more?
I would support them and give the new knowledge, and I got some new ideas through the meditation that I can combine my psychological and spiritual knowledge, and through this I can support them.
Great, beautiful, Marija. Pass it to someone. Marija, pass it to.
Beg your pardon?
Pass it to someone.
Ah, I need someone. Alex.
Great.
Thanks, Maria. Yeah. So I've been really resonating with what everybody else or many others shared around the gift of love. For me, it came up as the gift of kindness and the importance of that in my life. You know, I really sort of acknowledge that it's like a core value, and that I can bring more of that now with that awareness. And yeah, and I do that through the gifts of presence and warmth. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Pass it to someone.
Pass it to. I don't think Celia's gone yet. Pass it to Celia.
No.
I think what I'd like to do in terms of political expression, I'd like to take some more risks, which could be quite big ones for me, but then prepare for the kickback, which will probably go on inside me, and be aware of my wounds, so I don't give up at the first stage and fall over. So that's what I'd like to do. And I think people need to wake up to the world we're in, and we need to express that in everyone. So that's me.
Zarko.
Yeah, I try to justify kind of my action and or non-action, and my gift to the. I said I try to do as least impact on the world as I can, because most action or the invention and so on are used for to profit from it instead of for benefit of the people. So I try just to be nice to the people as much as I can. That's about it.
Great, beautiful, beautiful. So we've got 1 minute. I think the thing I really want to say is get the psychological support you need. So there's two things. So self-esteem is based on your own view of your own track record, of your history. So improve the way you think about your history. And the second is we need support from people around us. And we need support both in terms of peer group that inspire us and support us in giving our gift to the world. But also I just want to make, several people said things. You know, Celia, when you said kickback in yourself, do you have any psychological support, or are you part of a psychologically, emotionally intelligent group, or are you in therapy, you know, or anything like that?
I'm in therapy, and I like this group, and I'd like more of it, but I don't know where I find it really, because this is a very good group. So, yeah. Great.
Well, that's good. Come on come on the Life Talent program if that's interest to you, if you like this work. And there are lots of places we can get that, and I think groups are great places to get the psychological support we need. And there are, different places to get it. And I offer my approach to that. But I think everybody who wants to really make a gift to the world needs some sort of coaching, and that can either be one-to-one, or it can be some sort of group support. We all need people that we can say what's in our heart, and they say, yes, I hear you, I get you, rather than let me make you feel better, or let me do this, or let me do that. But just people who say, yes, I get what you're talking about. 6 o'clock, we're on time. Great to have you here today. I'm not doing another one of these until for several weeks. Let me just give you the date of the next one, which is until the 20th of July. Mm-hmm. On the 20th of July, I'm doing something on high performance, mastery. So once you know your life calling, then you follow a path of mastery to express it more fully. You can't do it all in one go. It takes time. It can take many years to give your gift fully to the world. And that's why we have to live long lives, and because then I'm 67. I've already pushed back my retirement date to 85, if my brain holds up, which I'm hoping it will. And so that session in July is about, what are the components of really being great at what we do, and that's what the session will be on. And then in the autumn, we'll do some sessions on, I'll tell you one more, because there's one more before August. There is, no, that's the last one actually, in July, the 20th of July. And then the 7th of September is what stops you from living your life fully. And that'll be about healing emotional wounds. And so will the 14th of September be about how we heal emotional wounds. In fact, the 3 in September, and then the 21st of September is believe in yourself. So we're sort of starting with the good stuff, the empowering stuff, and then we're going to deal with the healing component. So I hope to see you all at the next sessions in July. Lots of love to you all.
Travel well tomorrow, Julian.
Thank you.
Going to Greece.
To Skiros.
Yeah, to Skiros in Greece.
Bye.
Lots of love. Take care.